Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for clicking on us. My name is Leon, and welcome to the very first episode of The Pod of Many Things. The Pod of Many Things is going to be a weekly podcast where we talk about anything and everything related to D&D and tabletop RPGs. Each episode is going to have a theme, and we will discuss topics related to that theme. So please allow us to tell you a little bit about ourselves. We are three guys from the UK who, driven by pandemic boredom, have decided to set up a podcast and just talk about our favorite hobby. I'll introduce myself first and then we'll get into the other guys. My name is Leon, 29 years old, and during the day I'm a training manager at a large company in the UK. I am the stylized half-orc of the group, if you've seen the picture. And I've been into RPGs for about 4 years now, most of that time as a DM. I'll keep it simple. My favourite class in D&D is also the best class, the Bard. And if I were to describe my DM style, I'd say it's ad hoc. If we have a podcast session or something, you'll find out what that means. But next we have Troy. Troy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Leon. So my name's Troy. I'm 23. I'm a freelance videographer based in the UK, focused in marketing. But in my spare time, I'm a bit of a bedroom composer, and I just, love all things creative and have a passion for most of that kind of side of the world. In terms of D&D, I've been playing D&D for just over 4 years, recently beginning to branch out to other systems, but mostly my experience lies in DMing. I also help run a tabletop RPG club with a few friends of mine. As you can see, my avatar is a half-elf artificer. Half-elf because, shout out to my mixed boys out there.
Yeah, boy! Me too.
Best of both worlds, that's what we're talking about here. And then artificer because, well, crafting and creating magical things is just wonderful, isn't it? And final words.
Bards can do that too, but better.
Shout out to the guys for reaching out to me with this project. Never done anything like this before, and I don't think the guys have either.
Nope,
but
very
we're
first
looking
time.
forward to learning along with our beautiful audience, and it's probably going to grow into something pretty amazing. So, next up, over to you, Adderson.
It's your resident Furbolg wizard here, Adderson, Adderson. I'm 27 and I'm a secondary school English teacher in the UK. I have a degree in creative writing, and D&D's such a big part of my life that my marriage is now affected by it because my wife plays, and we enjoy our time together. But yeah, in terms of experience, I've been playing for around 4 or 5 years, mostly DMing, but some play. I currently run a D&D Discord called The Loom, and I was secretary and temporary chairman for a local D&D group as well. I run the D&D club at my school, which has become the most popular club across all year groups for our school. And yeah, I just want to say thanks to Leon for this being his brainchild and letting me crawl out of my quarantine hovel, and to Troy for just being ridiculously talented at everything, because without him and his tech knowledge, I doubt we'd be able to do this, because but that's me, and hopefully you'll enjoy it and stick around with us.
Thanks, Adderson. Thanks, Troy. Just to be clear to everybody, Troy's going to be the person doing all of the editing and stuff behind the scenes. Adderson sorted out all the social media for us, so they'll be in the description to wherever we decide to post this. Adderson also mentioned The Loom, which is his Discord channel. I'm sure he'll drop a link for that as well if you want to join that and come talk to us. It's quite active in there. We have a rather good group of people, and there's games going on almost every day, obviously because there's a pandemic going on. All the games are online, so it doesn't matter where you live, as long as there's one that you can meet the time for, then you can come and join a game. But
yeah, and it's not just D&D either, is it? It's other
no, it's
stuff,
not just D&D. We've got Call of Cthulhu. Yep. What else we got in there? You're doing a Wildermount campaign as well, aren't you?
Wildemount, yeah.
Yeah, and you've just done a... What did you just do? You did a Disney one, which was kind of cool.
Disney one was fun.
Disney theme.
But yeah.
I played Hercules.
That was fun.
Yeah,
so
until I
doing?
died. Anyway, let's get into the first topic. Yeah. So the first topic for our first session is exactly that. It's firsts. So, there's a first time for everything. There's a lot of first time things in D&D, so we're going to be talking about firsts for the first session. First campaigns, first characters, so on and so forth. But what I want to start with is first impressions, because I don't know about you guys, but for me, I'm 29 now. I've only been playing D&D for the past 3-4 years. There was a period of 26 years of my life where I thought D&D was just like the nerdiest thing ever, and I would never go near it.
Oh yeah.
What did you guys think of D&D?
Honestly, yeah, it was very similar for me. Like, just that whole idea that there was this nerd council that sat around a table owning and ruling over this world of D&D. And quite honestly, that sort of like distanced me from it. So yeah, I'm in your boat, Leon. Like,
yeah, and it's one of those things where I look back on it and I think, why was my mind so closed? I could have spent more time playing this. I've wasted my life not playing D&D. It's a travesty.
I think that there's been a bit of like a D&D renaissance recently.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's probably a topic for another day, but I think like when I was younger, I thought there was like the cellar dwellers that wouldn't let me in because of the fact that I hadn't been playing for long enough and I hadn't like sacrificed something to like the devil or something. There was like loads of like really weird and out there like problems that I kind of put in my own way, and like the rest of the world still kind of has that perception. But now that I'm in there, I feel like a lot more like, oh no, this is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird that like it's that whole sort of like paradoxical shift of perspective where you're like, now that you're in the world, you're like, oh shit.
I think there's two things that you can attribute to the popularity of D&D. The first one is, what's that podcast called that Matt Mercer does? Critical Role. Yeah. The second one, I think, I got in D&D just before this second one came out. The second one, Stranger Things.
Oh,
of
course.
I think there's also possibly a third there
right.
with, like in person, because it's not just D&D that's seen a bit of a resurgence. It's also like board games. We've got like board game cafes now and everything. I think sitting around a table with people in this world where it's very digital and very like, right, what's on your phone? Like people quite like that, and I think D&D is that, isn't it? It's that thing of I can sit around a table with my mates for like 5 hours.
Because it used to be you could go around your mate's house, break out the GameCube or the Nintendo, whatever it is, and you could just sit on the couch together and play. You can't do that anymore. Apart from Nintendo, you can't do it on Xbox or PlayStation.
Well, I mean, quite literally, right now we cannot do that.
Yeah,
but yeah, everything's online, isn't
everything's online. They took away split screen, and people still want that thing where they can sit down next to a friend, have jokes, rather than playing with 12-year-olds online that are fucking your mum and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
That is
Fortnite
so true.
dancing over everything.
Yeah.
And
so
go on.
Yeah, I was going to say then. So with that barrier, like, how did we get over that barrier then? How did we go from the Nerd Council's going to deny me membership to being full-fledged members of the Nerd Council?
So my experience, the door was open to me, and shout out to your profession, Adderson, by a teacher, no less.
Thank you.
So there was I believe it was primary school. End of year 6, nervous time, you're moving up into year 7. Obviously, if we have any US listeners, I'm not really too sure how that would translate over. I think it's sort of like high school time. But basically, this teacher, I was a bit of a, sort of, was it outside of the normal social circles kind of child. I'd always hang out the back of the classroom, didn't really have too many friends, but like 1 or 2 very close friends. But one of them was very close with this teacher called Mr. Gray. And I remember him very, very well. He was a lovely teacher, English teacher. Jesus, there are a lot of parallels.
His name was Mr. Gray. What did he do in his spare time?
Oh, God.
Yeah, well, didn't ask that far.
I was going to say, this kid better not be too close to Mr. Grey, otherwise there's a CP issue.
Oh God, no! I really hope not. Now that I think back, it's like, oh yes, come play at my table, young child.
Oh God.
But yeah. No, he was a really nice guy. Honestly, he could tell that I was like one of those kids that didn't really fit in anywhere, and knew that D&D, like, because he was in the world, was like the perfect way for me to escape. And that's when I first was introduced to it. He invited me to this after school sort of like thing, and it turns out one of my friends went to this club, but he didn't want to tell me about it because he was worried that I'd like call him a fucking nerd, like. so like when he told me that he was going to this club and that Mr. Grey had invited me and all this stuff, I was like, cool, I'll give it a go. And honestly, from that point on, I was sold. It was sad because shortly after, obviously I left and moved on to year 7. So I left that school, and obviously Mr. Grey stayed there. So I could never really continue that. But from that point on, it was just in the back of my mind, like, D&D is freaking cool. Like,
that's a pretty cool story. What about you, Leon? How did you find it?
I found it in a different way, but it's tangentially similar. Me and the wife, we moved away from my hometown a few years ago, and moving away from your hometown as an adult. And at the time, I was working a job where I was basically on the road or working from home, so it was very difficult for me to meet people. Until a friend from my hometown invited me to come and play a game. It was like an hour's drive each way, but I didn't have anything else to do because where I was living, I didn't know anybody. The wife was working, she was doing shift work at the time, so she was gone until like 2 to 10 or 10 to 6 in the morning. So I thought, you know what, I'll drive back to my hometown once a week, once every 2 weeks, whatever, just to see what this is all about. And a friend invited me. It wasn't actually D&D. It was and we'll talk about this in more detail later, it was an Adventure Time homebrew RPG. The RPG itself was absolute dogshite, but just, going... just going and having
We're not saying that about Adventure Time, by the way.
No, just the RPG. Just the RPG. But yeah, going actually to somebody's house and, there's a room full of people that you can just shoot the shit with. That was what... initially appealed to me, but then as we started going through the campaign and shit started getting crazy, I was like, wow, this is actually kind of good. I like this. And then eventually I, joined the library up here, the club there, and, so on and so forth. Done a couple of online games. Yeah, that's how I got into D&D. Just got invited one day and I thought, fuck it, why not?
That's how it is, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Just someone floats you an invitation and boom, you're in the world.
It's like crack, isn't it? Hey, Craig.
It's like,
do you want to try some of this shit I got at the weekekend?
Yeah, I got this
and then you're just hooked.
Good D&D.
You see, I didn't have that. I didn't have an invitation. So there's a bit of a disconnect with my story, because I was first exposed to D&D at like a young age. I don't know if you guys had it, but my school had this weird thing where you could bring toys in and stuff. Like my primary school, you could bring toys in like once a day. And
you
this
must have
kid
went to a
brought
really
in
posh
D&D.
school compared to the one I went to. You take a toy to school, you're not going home with it. That shit's getting stolen.
Oh, it's the same. It was the same at my school, but we were just we just lived in the country, so everybody was in denial. But yeah, so. Kid brings D&D in, like 3rd edition 3.5, and we do that thing that kids do where we don't read the instructions, but we really like dice and the figures and everything, and we kind of not play it but play it. And then I kind of, as I grew up, realised the same thing we were talking about, like the Council of Nerds, the Neckbeard, Cellar Dwellers and everything like that are going to get me. And then it was when I was really ill. I remember I'd come home from uni, I was really ill, I was off work, and I think I was floating through Pinterest and I accidentally found this fan art for a show called Critical Role, which we've already mentioned. I then binge watched so much of it on that week I was sick, and then ordered a player's handbook, started like watching YouTube videos, like, and then took it to work to like help kids, because I worked with vulnerable kids with social difficulties. I tried to get them to work together, and then when I decided, right, I think I feel ready to branch out and try and play with other people my age and adults my age and I found my dad's mate found when the club was at Burton Latimer, and then sent me the links, and I had a hour-long conversation with the OG Steve King, who I'd never met, but we were on the phone for ages, and he told me to come, and I came, and it all went from there. And now look at us, we're doing a D&D podcast,
and the rest is history, or so they say.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to get into, isn't it? It's not like, a sport or something where it's just happening at your school. I mean, it is now at your school, thanks to you, Adderson, but it's a weird thing to get into, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like counterculture almost.
Yeah. You need to know a guy, basically. If you want to do it in real life, you need to know a guy.
Yeah, you need to know a guy. It's what...
That is good.
It's literally we're all criminals. That's what
we're making it sound so
criminal
seedy.
Background, right?
Oh God!
Trust me, it's not that seedy. Honestly, it's not. It's the purest thing ever. If you have the right people at the table.
D&D is a fantastic excuse to be social and weird with all of your friends.
Exactly, and like even when so I worked with kids who had social difficulties, like selective mutism, stuff like that. Man, like seeing them step out of themselves and have that fun for an hour, half an hour, and finally relax and be like, yo, I can pretend to be this elf, and that means that none of my problems are real anymore, sort of thing. It was wonderful, and I think
I agree. I don't even think that's just for
magic.
Kids. It's like, for myself professionally at work, if when I was teaching, if you can sit at a table with a group of people that you barely even know and pretend to be a goblin, then take that to work. Next time you need to give a presentation to some important people, it makes you feel a lot more at ease, more comfortable in yourself doing those kind of things.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Improvisational skills as well.
Yes, improvisational skills. 99%
my God,
of
the
my
amount of
games
times that you'd have to make shit up on the fly.
Yeah, that's pretty much all of my games.
Mate, the ability to wrangle together people in general who have lives, jobs, taxes, it's like herding cats. So I feel as if they're I don't know if you guys saw it, but there was a thing on Facebook, I think it was, where how to put D&D on your CV. And it was glorious because it was like organisational skills, like you said, improvisational skills, teamwork, moral dilemma choices,
problem solving.
Yeah, exactly.
There you have it, folks. D&D is for the CVs out there. You want your next job? Play some D&D.
I think that's a good point to segue into our next topic.
Yes, let's do that.
All right, so it's not the very first topic. We've just discussed the first topic. Second topic, I want to know, who shall we start with? Troy, what was your very first character in D&D?
Oh, okay, right. Let's wind the clock back. So, yes, this would be with the aforementioned English teacher, Mr. Gray. And oh my God, the more I think about it, the more it's just going to go down the
are we going to
the
cringe?
Old book route. Oh God. So yeah, we were in a dungeon together. So no, my first character, I remember very distinctively. For some reason, dwarf stood out to me.
Right.
And I think Adderson, it was around about the same sort of editions. I think 3.5.
Yeah.
So it's like the classic sort of red box that everyone sort of recognizes. It was that sort of era, and I remember just flicking through the book of art and just seeing like this stunted dwarf, and like, mind you, as a kid, big into Lord of the Rings. Like, shout out to Tolkien. That is some excellent fantasy writing there.
Granddaddy Tolkien.
Granddaddy Tolkien. But dwarves, especially Gimli, I fucking loved him. And so as soon as there was an option for me to be a dwarf, that was the one for me. So I picked dwarf. Obviously, I didn't really know too much about the game. It was my first try, so Mr. Gray did suggest that I play fighter, which makes sense. You know, I look back at it and I'm like, yeah, you know what, dwarf fighter, solid pick. But yeah, dwarf fighter. That was my very first character, and my God, did I do my absolute best to embody Gimli.
So nobody tossed you?
Well, I mean,
Including
we're going to
Mr.
be
Gray.
coming up to first character deaths, I hope, so we'll get into that later.
Okay.
God.
Addison, what was your first character?
Oh man, mine's even worse. I feel terrible. So with the, like, when I was in year 6, when we didn't really play, well, year 5, year 6, we didn't really play. It was just the miniature, and I can't even remember. I just remember very distinctly the dice. But when I first got back into it, it was for an online campaign that I'd trawled a website I used to go on all the time, a forum website called Gaia Online. Oh God! Oh man!
Oh my.
Basically, we played on Skype, and I made myself as a monk, and yeah, it was the cringy archetypal power fantasy of like, because I was a martial artist. I loved martial arts, loved martial arts movies. So monk was just there like, oh my God, this is gonna be sick.
It's like, I'm basically Bruce Lee / Jackie Chan all in one.
Yeah, exactly. And just, yeah, I made myself. I ended up being like the party mascot, to the point where one of the girls in the group was just like, I will protect this monk with my life, because I was that clueless that I tried to do. He had like a dumpster-edged charisma. Because basically he was handsome and everything, but the problem was he'd only ever talked to monks, so he didn't understand how to talk to other people. And, so he thought, oh, monks respond well to things like tests of strength and stuff like that, like showing your skill. So I tried to do a bunch of push-ups on a barrel and rolled a nat 1 and fell in the barrel to the point where the party came out of the tavern that I'd been kicked out of previously for not being able to talk to people properly, to a monk's legs just flailing wildly out of a barrel.
Okay.
It was cringy as hell. Come on then, Leon. I bet you've got some epic story about this. Yours is going to be...
I actually don't have an epic story about the first character. My first character wasn't that long-lived because I didn't particularly like it. Like I already said, my first campaign, it was an Adventure Time homebrew. The system wasn't D&D to begin with, but then we got up to a point where the DM was like, you know what, this system sucks, let's switch over to 5e. So we did that. But the very first character I ever made... Are you guys familiar with Adventure Time?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah, big time.
The very first character I ever made. Well, I'm not familiar with Adventure Time. I to this day, despite doing like a year-long campaign of Adventure Time homebrew, I've never watched an episode.
That must have been a very confusing campaign for you.
Yeah.
I know a lot about Adventure Time, and dear God.
Well, I was invited to the game, and I was like, look, Alex, shout out to Alex, I've never watched Adventure Time. And he was like, oh, that's fine, don't watch it, then there'll be less spoilers for you. And I was like, fine. So I never watched it. And I feel like if I watch it now, it won't be as good as the experience I had playing that game. So I don't intend to watch it. But anyway, my first character was a party bear. I don't remember what the class was, because obviously it was a homebrew thing, and I think he lasted maybe 3 or 4 sessions before I decided, you know what, I don't like this character, I'm going to make another one.
Am I the only one getting some sort of like weird like thing of party bear being a thing where you used to dance around people? Like, is that a thing? Like, we used to do that at school? Like, just
Wait, hang on. No, are you thinking about Party Boy, which is a jackass stunt?
Yeah.
Where he'd go to a shop with a speaker. I mean, if anyone in the audience knows what that is, you will definitely know what I'm talking about. But I think it's called Party Boy, yeah.
Oh, I thought it was... So I'm imagining, like, this bear with a party hat on, like, dancing around
boombox
people.
on shoulder.
Yeah, exactly.
In like a G-string.
Yeah. Is that what you did, Leon? What the hell?
Well, my understanding of party bears as they exist in Adventure Time is they're basically like living teddy bears that really like to party.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, if I remember from the show, yeah, they are basically a bunch of like rave bears.
Yeah, basically.
Like instead of Care Bears, they're rave bears. I
Yeah.
remember that episode. I remember that. Yeah.
But
It's ringing a bell.
I probably went through a few different characters in that campaign. I remember at one point I was a fridge, and I called myself F-Mo because I know there's a character called B-Mo. But I can tell you that my best character of my first campaign, the one that stuck with me, he was a devil, and because we switched over to 5e at that point, he was basically a tiefling.
Right.
What was his name? And he was basically a pirate. He had the sailor background. His name was Calico Jack. Because at the time I was watching Black Sails and I was like super hyped for pirates, so I named him Calico. No, it wasn't Calico Jack. I called him Calico Chantilly, which is, in hindsight, a stupid name, but such an amazing character.
Yeah, I was digging Calico Jack.
Yeah, Calico Jack was sick.
Yeah, I shouldn't have told you that his real name. But yeah, he was essentially a tiefling that had escaped hell, and his entire aim in life was to somehow become king of the Nitosphere, or the underworld, in non-Adventure Time speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was my string of first characters. What else did I play? There was the party bear, F-Mo, which was a fridge. The fridge, I can't remember what class I played for the party bear, but the fridge I played as a it was a homebrew class. The class where you have loads of potions and you make potions and mix them together and throw them at people. Alchemist. Yes, it was a homebrew alchemist. And I decided not to use the fridge simply because I didn't like that class. It was too much resource management. So I thought, Alex, can I make another character? I'm not really digging this class.
Do you have a tendency to do the old meme where you've got your current character, but you're looking over your shoulder at the next one?
Yeah. It's also just, it was a terrible homebrew class.
Oh man, you think your names were bad? Like, I was genuinely so stuck on a first name. Bearing in mind, I've got a creative writing degree. I'm used to making up characters. And I was just there like, I don't know what to name him. What do people call me? And I was like, Bear. And I was like, right, I'm playing a monk. So let's be slightly offensive and look at what bear is in Chinese.
Oh, wow.
I went
the Google Translate name.
I went the Google Translate route. His name was Xiong, which is Chinese, sorry, not Japanese.
Apologies to any Chinese people if that was butchered just then.
Yeah. I'm really bad at foreign words, as Troy has found out with Tagalog.
Tagalog, yes, my native language.
But yeah, so I think we've chalked it up now that all first characters are shit. Is that true?
Yeah.
Do we think?
But in a good way.
Oh yeah, totally. But
because
they're so bad
every time it's a learning thing.
Yeah.
That's it. That's exactly it. All right, those are your first characters. Now, what I want to know is what campaign they were in. Who wants to go first? We already know what campaign mine was in. It was Adventure Time. So let's hear one of yours.
Go on, Adderson.
So Xiong was in a campaign that was homebrewed. It wasn't a module or anything, and I think that's where my aversion to modules comes from. But again, that's a topic for a different day. And basically, he was looking for something, and he managed to find this group of adventurers, and we ended up embroiled in this massive conspiracy with the Thieves Guild and the Parliament, and we ended up going on a voyage. We ended up on a boat. I think the most distinctive thing that I remember from that campaign, because we never finished it. It never it just fell apart one day.
Wow.
There were two moments that I remember. I remember killing a young green dragon. Not a young green dragon, a baby green dragon, sorry. And turning its scales into like a cloak for the barbarian who wanted to protect me. And I also remember two people joined our campaign like halfway through, and we just, unfortunately for them, their backstory was that they snuck onto our ship to escape somewhere. So they were in disguise, but we had literally just dealt with somebody being disguised on the ship. So I, as Xiong, not having charisma, not knowing people very well, acing my insight check to know these people are hiding, was just like, "What are you doing here?" Rah, rah, rah. And he wouldn't tell me what was going on. So I punched one dude, and then he literally took his headset off, because obviously we're online. You hear him take his headset off and shout towards his missus, like, "I didn't know we were joining a party of murder hobos," and I felt really bad.
No.
So those two quit, and then our thing, but Xiong was just acting in character. These are the first friends he'd ever had. He had this barbarian who was like trying to protect him and shield him, and he'd had the opportunity to pay her back, and he was like, "Oh, I'm not gonna let these people harm my friends," and yeah, it was a mess.
Oh my god. I think, yeah, like with the, because it was online, wasn't it? Didn't you say?
Yeah, it was over Skype. So Roll20 was like a Back to the Future concept. Like,
yeah, I was gonna say,
get the DeLorean, go 3,000 years in the future to us. Like,
yeah, there's a lot more resources out now that makes it a lot easier for people to do such a thing, and I think like it's commendable that even in such a sort of like limited time of like resources for such a thing, you were still sort of doing exactly what I would imagine people would be doing in a D&D game, which just goes to prove that D&D just can like be put anywhere and it works.
Yeah. So go on then, Troy. Your turn.
Right. So first campaign specifically, unfortunately this wasn't with Mr. Grey, because technically the game that I was part of was not only like a small module, but it was basically supposed to be a one-shot. But because we were a bunch of incompetent kids that were basically ADD fueled little charged batteries, this dungeon just took so long for us. It was just so bad. Like every rock just needed to be turned over for us, and like I kind of felt sorry for Mr. Grey.
You were every DM's nightmare.
Yes,
it's just a chair.
Yeah, no, it's not. No, it's not. Like everything is a mimic. But yeah, so that I wouldn't really count as my first campaign. So my first proper campaign wasn't actually. I wasn't actually playing. My first campaign was a game that I actually made myself.
Brave.
Yeah.
Brave.
I mean, it wasn't like I had much of a choice. It was sort of a thing where like a group of us were into the idea of doing it, and no one was stepping up to the plate of DM. And I think just that little part of me that was like, I want to do this, just said, you know what, go for it. And I made the leap. I did my best to use all the resources that was available to me. So I did pick up a player's handbook for my friends. And then it took me a while before I even got any DM's manuals. Like I was doing all of this just based on the information that I could get from the player's handbook. But yeah, so my first campaign was really short. And it was set in a world which I have now actually returned to in a current campaign that I'm running, and have actually sort of expanded upon that initial idea. But it was just a woods, and essentially what was happening was there was a group of wood elves and a group of goblins that lived within this large portion, the largest forest in this world, and these two nations essentially were at war over the territory of the forest, and the party members had to sort of make a decision to either join a side or sort of help quell the conflict. And obviously this was my first time running it, so my god, were there loads of plot holes, like just little strings that I just never forgot to tie off. But the great thing is because my players were learning too, it just was much more of a relaxed play experience, and for a DM that was just starting, it was really confidence boosting for me. It built up a lot of my early improvisational skills, and you know, I learned to bullshit pretty damn quick because my players, they pull some fast ones on me. But yeah, that was my first experience with the campaign. I didn't get to play. That's a sad thing, really.
Mate, Mate, that's kind of brave though. That your first like proper campaign was you running it with just the player's handbook.
Yeah,
like,
that's what
even
I had.
I was there like, when I was first learning, I was there with the player's handbook, and we just did like one-on-one fights. Like we'd make a character and then fight, basically. And then as I learned the rules, like I then got the DMG and everything else. So credit to you.
It's like we said. I mean, you have to know a guy to get into it, and if you're one of those people that doesn't know a guy, you kind of just have to jump in there, don't you? And that's, I mean, thinking about myself when I first started D&D, there's no way I would have just randomly jumped in and decided to DM a game from the very beginning. There's no way I would have done that.
Yeah, and
so very, very brave thing to do.
I also think that it must have been cool that they were like learning with you.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah.
One of the most, even to this day, now I wouldn't say I'm like an expert, but as quite a seasoned DM, one of the worst things that you get is when you see another DM that you've either seen run or has ran for you sit opposite you and you're on the DM screen side.
Oh yeah.
So that having a bunch of like complete noobs, like not to be like degrading or anything, but like a complete newbies must have been like, yes, I have room to grow here as well.
Yes,
Whereas I think
it was...
of my first like adult one, there were people who's like, yeah, I've DM'd for like since I was 13, and they're like the same age as me. I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna die.
That's a different kind of pressure, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
But then again, commend yourself for that too, because like even though there was that pressure there, you sat there and blasted out a campaign, and it deserves equal credit, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think the jump, like we said earlier, the jump into the world of D&D is something to commend, whether you're a player or a DM.
Oh yeah.
Like it is about those first leaps.
Yeah.
So you take the first leap into D&D. That's step one, and then step two is the leap into DMing.
Exactly.
Like, so, yeah.
And then eventually getting to a point where you're homebrewing your entire campaign, which is
yeah.
something I still haven't done. I've still yet to homebrew an entire campaign. I don't think I will. I don't think I ever will.
I can't do modules. I can't. I have to make it up.
We'll pencil that.
I'm sure we'll get into that as well.
Because I can talk for a while on why I use modules and would prefer to do that instead of making my own.
So what's next, Leon? Take us away,
another first.
bad boy.
Pop another first of mine, Leon, please.
Take my cherry.
How you doing? What did we just discuss? We just discussed our first campaign. What I want to know now, I think I'll go first on this one because I didn't really talk much during the first campaign bit. I'll go first on character death. What was your first character death?
This better be epic.
And again, I'm going to preface this by saying this was not my first character, because my first character was the party bear, and I don't remember anything about that character.
No.
I'm going to rephrase the question for myself. What was your first memorable character death? And again, there's another caveat to this. The character didn't die. The character got to a point where I couldn't play this character anymore. So, we were playing Adventure Time. I was a devil. During the course of that campaign, we became very friendly with somebody called Marceline, who is a vampire girl.
Vampire Queen.
Vampire Queen, yes. And she is also the daughter of the devil himself, whose name I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, he ate her fries. Yeah, we know what you mean. Yeah. I can't remember his name either.
Yeah. So during the course of this campaign, we became very friendly. And, I need to stress, the campaign wasn't like this. It was a very innocent campaign up until this point. But it got to a point where we were at Marceline's house, for whatever reason I can't remember, things got a bit crazy, and relations were had.
Wow.
It wasn't that type of campaign, but on this one specific session, relations were had.
You definitely didn't watch the show.
Okay, yep, I definitely didn't. We'll circle back around to that. Now, this character, his one goal, his one ambition, the only thing he wanted to do was to find a way to become the king of the Nitosphere.
So by marrying Marceline, surely?
That was his intention. That's not what he ended up doing.
Oh,
Oh
no.
dear. Oh god.
Yeah, it's worse.
Married her
It's
dad.
worse. Oh god. It's worse.
Oh, no.
It's very much worse.
I was joking.
All right. So his only goal was to become king of the Nightosphere, and he didn't care how he did it. But he was a rogue. The class was rogue. He was an opportunistic little bugger. And at the beginning, the party didn't trust him. He kept trying to steal things from the party. Again, this was my first campaign. I wouldn't do that kind of stuff nowadays, but in my first campaign, I was the guy that was stealing things from other party members. But players kept getting annoyed. They kept doing things to me in character. I would lose because I didn't have the correct stats. It was usually like strength or something. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to stop doing this. It's annoying everybody else. So I'll take a step back. So for the next several sessions, I was very helpful. I was very courteous. And I wanted to really build the other players' trust. We got to a point where there was this race. It was basically wacky races, and it was amazing. And the prize for winning the race was to get an orb, and this orb was a magic item which allowed you to cast one wish. At this point, the party were, they're completely friendly with me. They figure I've changed my ways. They got nothing to worry about. Until the orb was presented. Me, being a sneaky little fucker, sneaky little rogue, being a devil, decided to snatch the
Of
orb
course.
and make the wish to be the king of the Nightosphere. And it worked. I did become the king of the Nightosphere. I went back in time, millions of years, and became the very first devil. And over the next few millions of years, back up to present day, he slowly became the actual king of the Nightosphere. Meaning, the person he was trying to usurp, he literally became that person.
Oh no.
So, Marceline's dad.
You became Marceline's dad.
Yes.
Oh,
okay.
that puts a whole new meaning to be my daddy.
Oh
Dear God.
Oh my god!
You-
And like that's
what?
such an innocent show. Like
How-
that's so.
I
Dear
know.
God.
I know.
For God's
It was an
sake.
innocent campaign as
That's
well.
some Back to the Future shit right there.
Oh,
Alex,
God.
if you're listening, you're still fucked up for this.
Oh,
You're disgusting.
that is so weird, but that is such a good when people like fuck with your wish to make it somehow backfire.
Yeah.
That was such good.
Yeah, that's godly.
Oh, yeah,
That's godly
of course you
work
could
right there.
become. Of course, you become the king of the Nightosphere, the first king of the Nightosphere.
Mhm.
Like whoa, like that was
Yeah.
sick.
I remember he messaged me after the session, and he was like, "Leon, you need to make a new character. I'm not joking." And I was like, "Oh no, I messed up really big."
Come on,
no.
everyone's seen Aladdin. You know the genie gives you the lowdown on how to make a wish. He has a whole damn song about it.
Yep.
Oh man.
That to me is the most memorable moment in D&D I've ever
No,
had.
that's quality.
want
That's
that.
quality.
Yeah. And
That is cool.
I hope you appreciate that I had to rephrase that question a little bit just so I could
No,
squeeze
no,
that story in there.
No, that is a banger of a story. Not gonna lie. So I want to hear why tossing the dwarf got you killed, Troy, or whatever. Is that
Yes.
Is that your...
Yeah. Okay. So this long ass dungeon that we as children could not overcome. We were basically being handheld. we were holding each other's hands throughout the entire process, just like hoping that we don't die and being basically paranoid of every portion of this entire dungeon. And the one time, like, I feel like it was the one time, it probably wasn't, but it feels like the one time that we all decide, you know what, we're comfortable with this room. Mr. Grey must have just felt the comfort in the air, because he then dropped a slime on us all.
Wow.
A big ol' ooze.
Oh no.
Big ol'
Oh no.
gelatinous death cube, right? Now, as a naive dwarf, right, attempting to embody Gimli, you at first are fearful, but then it quickly goes into denial and then courage. And so I ask my other fighter companion, who is a human, bit of an Aragorn, but I was like, throw me. launch me at this thing and I will destroy it. Not realizing, because I've never played D&D at this point, that gelatinous cubes... there's a very specific way you have to go about handling these things.
Nom.
Yeah.
You know what? I've never used a gelatinous cube as a DM, and I've never encountered one as a player, so I'm intrigued to see where this story goes.
Obviously, I didn't realize that if you attempt to try and, like, attack this gelatinous cube, not only does it pretty much do sweet FA, but if you are thrown at it, your trajectory typically puts you inside the creature. And so what happens is once a creature is swallowed by a gelatinous cube, every turn they take a tremendous amount of acid damage as they are slowly digested. Along with, I think in 3.5, most of your equipment also becomes null and void and loses loads of, like, kind of...
3.5 was unforgiving,
yeah, it
man.
was so unforgiving. So I basically get yeeted at full strength into the gelatinous cube, squaring myself right in the center of this thing, and then just none of my party could claw me out because it's resistant to all of their attacks. And so they just watched as I fizzled away like a pill in a bloody glass of water. Like I just died there and then. It was so sad. First character death. I was devastated. I was so happy with the dwarf, and then I just got cocksure. I think that's the downfall for a lot of characters, really, isn't it?
Yeah, you get a bit overconfident.
Well, it's your own fault for, not listening to Gimli's advice. You never toss a dwarf. What do you go and do?
Yeah.
Tolkien was right, man.
Yes, Tolkien was 100% right and always has been.
Oh, God.
What you got, Adderson?
So, Xiong didn't die, because, again, he had the barbarian who protect for a long time. The first character I made that died has actually died twice in 2 separate campaigns, because I bring him out every now and then. He's called Kindling Prigby. He's a Fire Genasi wizard, and he's a bit of a smart ass. And basically, we were in a campaign where, like, constructs were taking over, and if they killed whatever they killed, they, like, converted. They were like this weird, like, almost like mesh up of Liquid Terminator and the Borg, and they would, like, and it was so they stole the princess of the country that we were protecting, and we'd already had a clash with them, and then they stole the princess, and we decided that we would follow through the portal that was left behind, and we did. And it took us to the heart of, like, one of these factories, and we snuck through to this lot for ages, and then I can't remember what happened, but we basically tripped this massive alarm. So we ran into a cell, we barricaded the cell, and it was actually the princess's cell, and then I cast Leomund's tiny hut in the cell, like, not as a ritual, like, straight up spent a spell slot to cast Leomund's tiny hut, which still took a while, but that's why we had to hold out for ages. Yep. And basically, Big Bad comes in, sits on the other side of the Leomund's tiny hut, and just waits for us. We rest. Oh, jeez. I pray to Ayun, who I've, like, accidentally made a deal with, and she levels us all up to level 10 because this boss is, like, too strong. Like, our DM realises, oh crap, this was not supposed to happen. And yeah, we come out all guns blazing. I'm like firing spells off. We're being like badass, like, and then just out of nowhere, I get absolutely clocked with, I think, Melf's acid arrow, and, like,
nice.
I get clocked. I go down. And the DM, who was my friend's brother, decided that, yeah, these guys would try and convert you because you've shown yourself to be so strong. And they killed me, and then my player character joined the initiative on the other side as this hulking, great big... Because it also, like, they also made you, like, the opposite of what you were. So kindling, wiry, charismatic, intelligent becomes flaming, bulky, like, monster. Ghost Rider-esque shit, and it's like, oh no. And then we actually had to stop the fight because like all of us were just like, so, because it was the first time any of us had seen a character death. We genuinely like mourned. We went through the stages of grief, and this is when we're like 20. I'm at least 23 at this point. Like I'm like they're like going through the stages of grief over a piece of paper. And it was like it was insane. It was such a cool cinematic moment. Like if it was in cinema, it would have been great. But at the time, in that experience, I was like, oh my god! Like I love kindling. Like we've been through this massive journey, and then smash.
That's the sad thing.
Like got frying panned.
Yeah, once you've built up this like journey and like sort of, I guess, experience, because you know you're playing this character, you essentially feel like you're them, and then when they're gone, it's like you lose that part of you, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah, you're playing through this character's life. I mean, you've created a character that has ambitions and goals, and just like a person in real life, you know, that's suddenly cut off. You know, it has an impact. It absolutely does.
Yeah, because like he'd started as like this guy who had a chip on his shoulder that just wanted to prove to everybody he was the most intelligent. He'd make deals with everybody because they kept saying, "Oh, are you the devil?" Like because he's a fire genasi, so dark skin, fire hair, like, and so he like molded himself into that issue. And then as people began to trust him, like the king, and like began to listen to his tactics, he was like growing, and he was no longer this guy who needed to like manipulate everybody into position. Like he had command. So he was like, and then when that finally happened, we were gonna go into this massive thing, and then just critted on the Melf's acid arrow, wizard, gone. It was so grim because we even planned to play a new campaign with new characters, and we would have had to go and kill him, like as a group. Like
oh wow.
Yeah, they were like pillars. The constructs had pillars. He became something like the Inferno. Like, and basically the Inferno was their like siege weapon. He just set everything on fire. And it's like it was so heartbreaking as well to know that he was just being used to do terrible things.
Yeah, I know that feeling, Adderson.
Hey.
Oh, we got an inside story there. We got an inside story. You better tell it.
Okay, right. Well, this is funnily enough, topical because another character death of mine is thanks to Adderson.
First character death I ever made happen as well.
Yeah, it was like it. It was my first. I'd say it's definitely my most memorable character death. So the character was Mordecai. Just to give you an idea, edgiest paladin you'll ever meet.
So edgy, you'd cut yourself on him.
Yeah, he was a walking razor blade. This kid, right? So he was a fallen Asmar, of course. Paladin of, I believe, Vengeance. Oath of Vengeance.
Yeah, Oath of Vengeance because of the Raven.
And it was the Critical Role module in Tal'Dorei. So I was a worshipper of the Raven Queen, and there was this sort of like very sort of weird sort of love, like maternal but weirdly sort of romantic love for the Raven Queen that he had, but obviously he kept being put on the sideline because she had her own champions. And that jealousy sort of like brooded within him, and he just like let it out on all of her enemies. And the culmination of his story sort of got to the point where he just had a vendetta for gods and just using people as playthings. And Adderson introduced a archfey into the picture. And now if anyone knows how archfeys work, fuck me, they're there to annoy you to the point and when you do something, essentially. They had a deal be made. A game of, I believe, rock, paper, scissors?
Yeah, it was rock, paper, scissors. Yeah.
Yep.
We literally played rock, paper, scissors across the table with everybody watching.
Yep, and it was literally staking the archfey's life or Mordecai's life. And the game was played, and unfortunately Mordecai, not being so intelligent and a bit headstrong, didn't realise that obviously an archfey is going to play into the words, and by not giving any specifics about how the game would be played, essentially the archfey used his powers to manipulate the outcome of the game.
I cheated. I straight up cheated. I made him change his thing.
Yep. And Mordecai lost his life, but became an example to other gods that, playing around with mortals' lives was something of a touchy subject. And I think also we had a few characters that had their entire backstory from that point on completely shifted. Like we had a happy-go-lucky elf suddenly become so terrifyingly worried about losing anyone that she panicked in every situation. You had someone secretly wanting to have a gay relationship with my character suddenly coming out to his father and realizing that he's been sat on all of his feelings for so long. It was mental. It was such a crazy end.
And the worst part was he came back as an enemy. I brought him back.
You used me.
I just started. One time he just came in and started steamrolling over them.
Because paladins, they just bomb people. Yeah. So he'd just kick a door down like a SWAT team member and just smite.
It was bad, and I have learnt from that because it was fun. But then I realised that my god, that was nuts. That was so. Again, as you say, you're quite ad hoc, Leon, when you DM.
Yeah.
I feel as if my DM style would be best described as cinematic. I'm very this would look shit hot in a film.
Yeah.
I can agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm a very visual person when I DM.
Yeah. So yeah, that was the first character death I ever caused as a DM. Anyway.
What I'm really hoping is that somebody listens to this podcast and they've never played D&D before, and they hear through the stories that we're telling and the way in which we're telling them how much fun that we're having, and they decide to pick it up themselves. There's just so much passion going on in this right now, and I'm really enjoying it.
Definitely, and that. I think that actually, the fact that we're creating content that shows our passion leads on to our next topic, doesn't it? The fact that we're creating content and we want people to find it. What is the next topic?
Thank you for the segue, Adderson.
I'm good at that.
The next topic is the first D&D or RPG related YouTube content that you have consumed.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think this needs to be limited to YouTube, does it?
No.
We'll just say the first D&D RPG related content you ever consumed.
D&D related mediums.
Yeah.
Yes. I think mine. I really enjoy mine, but every time I ask somebody if they've watched it or not, they're just no, never heard of it. Mine is Harmon Quest.
You do go on about this a lot. Yeah.
I do go on about it a lot because it's amazing, and nobody's watched it.
I've never watched it. Is it by the guy who did Community?
Yes, Dan Harmon. He's put himself
Harmon
in the title. What's he done? He's done Community, Rick and Morty.
He's done Rick and Morty.
Yeah. He's not the DM on this show, but he does play a main character. Basically, what it is, it's a 30-minute episodic D&D show. They run in seasons of about 10 episodes. Every episode, they have a special celebrity guest. They've had people on there like Aubrey Plaza. They've had that Indian guy, Kumail Nanjiani. They've had so many funny guys on there. Yeah. It's such a great show. He doesn't DM himself. He gets a guy called Spencer Crittenden to DM it, who I think he met when he was doing one of his live podcasts. And he's just such a great DM, and he's literally my inspiration when it comes to DMing. I've never listened to a whole episode of Critical Role simply because the episodes are so long and I can't be bothered, and I don't have that kind of attention span. But the way he describes what's going on, it's just simple, it's to the point, there's no fluff, but you still get an idea of what's going on. He gives you the first line of a sentence, and then your mind writes the rest of that sentence, if that makes sense. He'll describe a door, and then the rest you'll fill in with your own imagination. And that's how I like to DM. That's probably the best D&D related YouTube content I have ever watched. And everybody needs to go out there and watch it.
Okay,
and I'm not going to stop talking about it. I'm not going to stop talking about it until you've watched it.
Okay.
I have seen Harmon Quest, so I will also be a member of the Vouching for Harmon Quest party.
We should also say that it's kind of half tabletop, people around a table, half cartoon. They animate parts of it when they're in their characters in the setting, and it's done in front of a live audience as well, so you get an audience reaction. It's very different to any other D&D medium.
Fair enough. I might actually check that out now, because that sounds like a great elevator pitch, I'm not gonna lie.
Send me the check, Dan Harmon.
Yeah. Sponsorship, Harmon Quest.
Yeah, boy.
Go on then, Troy. I feel as if you've got some absolute bangers for this one.
Okay. I mean, first content that I stumbled upon, I guess, would probably be how to be a great GM on YouTube.
Yeah.
So
I still use him now.
Yeah, when he first started out, it was like, I almost started getting that like neckbeard vibe for a moment. When he was just sort of like kind of going into it, but then quickly his passion and his sort of mentality about how he DMs and how you could improve and things like that, it really resonated with me. And being someone who, as I mentioned, started out my first campaign DMing it, he was pinnacle in me learning most of the techniques that I apply now. And much like you, Leon, with the DM from Harmon Quest, like he has been a very useful inspiration for my DMing style. But obviously, shortly after that, it didn't take long for me to find Critical Role. A friend mentioned it to me on the off chance that I might be interested, and I watched maybe 3 or 4 episodes in a day. And at about 3 o'clock in the morning, I had the realization that this shit's kind of good.
It's like a 12-hour day.
That is nuts. But I can vouch for the fact that it is possible because I've done it.
Yeah. You just sit there, and once you've gone through it, you kind of come out the other side like, whoa.
That was my life.
Yeah, that was holy crap. But no, Critical Role, very cool. Matt Mercer, shout out to that beautiful man. But yeah, I can't fault Critical Role just because, firstly, they're all voice actors. My God, like buttery smooth. That's all I can say.
They've got the nation's sweetheart, Laura Bailey.
Don't. I'm seeing rainbows right now. But yeah, Critical Role, really good. How to be a great GM, shout out to them. A little bit of Nerdarchy after that, but yeah, basically that's most of the content that I consumed in my early days.
Oh, I have to give a shout out to my favourite YouTube D&D channel, Puffin Forest.
Oh, I've never heard
Puffin Forest.
of them.
You've never heard of Puffin Forest?
No.
That is absurd. That is absurd, Adderson.
Absurd.
If you'd watched it, you'd know what I was talking about.
I will now go into my corner of shame and watch it on my phone.
You need to watch the absurd episode.
Yes, go, shoo, to your
Make sure
corner.
the first episode you watch needs to be the absurd episode.
Absurd.
It's amazing.
Okay.
Absurd, yeah. But no, Puffin Forest, animated D&D, so good.
Yeah. Mine.
Sorry. One more that I need to shout out. Runesmith for the win. Does great lists. Does great video essays. If you haven't heard of Runesmith, go check him out.
Yeah, like you guys, obviously D and Jesus, as I sometimes call him, Matt Mercer. Like he's amazing. And I did watch a bit of Acquisitions Incorporated because Patrick Rothfuss is in it, and I love him as a writer. But to be honest with you, they didn't get me into D&D. Like I could have watched them by themselves as like just a medium. Like I could have just been like, yo, this is a great show. Like I don't care about D&D. I think the people who actually got me into D&D are the people who I watched when I was learning to get into it. And I think one of the biggest ones was a channel called Dawnforged Cast. I don't know if any of you have heard of that. Andrew from Dawnforged Cast.
Yeah, yep. I'm not the biggest fan of Dawnforged Cast.
I quite liked him because of the fact that his how to build, because obviously when I was first learning to create a character, is how to build. I watched every single how to build this character, X character, in like a day. And I was like, oh, I can do it now. And like, so I would use that with the kids I was working with at work and stuff like that. And then people like Nerdarchy a little bit. It took me a while to warm up to Nerdarchy, I'm not gonna lie, because I felt a bit like they were that old guard of D&D at sometimes. The way they talked, you were a bit like, oh, you're the guys who like tell me that I can't play D&D because I haven't played every single edition, sort of thing. And then as I watched more, I realised that's not what they meant. It's just that was where they had their memories. I think the other one was a guy called Cody from Taking 20, who was amazing as well, and very similar to Dawnforge Cast. How to do this, does some great lists of products and whatnot to buy and help me out when building encounters. I think he's got a really cool thing like kill your party with X monster, so kill your party with kobolds was one of my favourites.
See, I like the sound of that.
Yeah,
But yeah, have to check him out.
Yeah, Taking 20 is pretty good, and there's obviously XP to level 3, Dungeon Dudes.
XP to level 3 is great. Dungeon Dudes are great.
Yeah.
I've heard of Dungeon Dudes, haven't seen anything from XP to level 3.
I think also as well, I've got to give a bit of a shout out to like Geek and Sundry, just in general as well, not just Critical Role, because like some of their other RPGs and stuff were really good, like Ashes to...
Yeah, I'd agree.
Ashes of Arcana, what was it called? It had Hank Green in it, the John Green's brother, and the Fluff Bros. It was Will Wheaton, Yuri Lowenthal. Yeah, it was just so good. So yeah, Geek and Sundry as well. But yeah, those are my ones, and it was mostly to help me out as a player and as a DM. I was more educational, apart from Critical Role.
Well, hopefully the audience goes and checks those respective channels out and give them some love from us.
We'll make sure to put them in the description.
Alright, that takes us to our final segment. Drum roll.
Don't have any drums.
The deck of many questions. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. We'll work on some sound effects for that.
Yeah.
Alright, now, the deck of many questions at the moment is just a concept for reasons which will become quite apparent. What we're hoping to do with this session is to have community questions from the listeners who get in touch via our social media, via the Discord, whatever. We will put any and all of those questions into a hat and pull them out. We will then assign one of the three of us to answer that question. We'll choose at random, just the same as we'll pull the question out of the hat. We'll pull one of us out of that hat. That person must answer that question regardless of what's on it, and they must answer it honestly. Adderson, Troy, did I describe that correctly?
Well, let's get into the concept of, firstly, the deck of many things, which some of you D&D players may be familiar with. Those of you who aren't D&D players and you're just listening to the podcast, essentially what it is, it's a deck filled with cards that will do very random things. Some things are very good, some things are very bad. And this sort of randomness we really want to interject at the end of the show. So when it comes to suggesting questions, we'd love it if you keep in mind the theme of the deck. So, you know, give us some bombshell questions, you know, maybe anything that like might expose us as a DM, you know, like
spice. We want spice.
When was the last time you lied to your players? This sort of thing. But then we also want what was your happiest moment as a GM? You know, these kinds of questions will be absolutely perfect to.
Yeah, it's got to be related to D&D. You can't just ask us like, when did you lose your virginity? You can't ask us questions like that. It has to be related to what we're talking about. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, and I think one of the cool things about it is there is that opportunity like to really make us sweat, because of the fact that there will be some questions that, because me and Troy bandied some about, that are a bit like, I hope I do not get this question, because one, you all know when I'm lying, and two, it will just be awkward. But then there are others where you're like, oh no, you know what, if I get that question, that'll slap. That'll go so well.
We've got some example questions here that we've written ourselves just for the first episode, but hopefully, subsequent episodes will have questions from listeners. All right, so what we're going to do for the deck of many things, we have 10 questions. We're going to roll a d10 to determine which question we're going to answer. Then we're going to roll a d6 to determine who answers that question, and we're each going to take one question. Make sense, guys?
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. All right,
I've
Adderson,
seen
you've
some
got
of these questions, so I'm nervous.
All right, Adderson, you have the dice. Do you want to start by rolling the d10?
So that is a number 1.
Number 1. There is no question for number 1. Could you please roll that again?
2.
2. Okay, the question is... I like this question, actually. I would answer this myself if it wasn't randomized. Is it bad for DMs to pick and choose their players?
Oh no.
That's the question.
Here we go.
Alright, now the next part, we're going to roll the d6. 1 to 2 will be me, 3 to 4 will be Troy, 5 to 6 will be Adderson.
Alright.
The roll was 3.
Damn, I really wanted that one.
Oh god, okay.
Take it away, Troy.
Troy's like the nicest guy as well, so putting him on the spot like this is like so shit.
Okay, alright. So, Leon, if you want to just say the question out loud once more.
Is it bad for DMs to pick and choose their players?
Okay. My answer? No. To a degree. Now, I'm gonna stick with no because I know these guys are gonna police me and be like, no, you gotta answer the question. So I will give.
I was
give my
genuinely
answer.
just about to call cop out.
Yeah. I'm not gonna cop
I'll let you
out. My
continue.
answer is no. It's not bad. And the reason that I feel that it's not bad is because, much like Adderson said, when he plays D&D and when he DMs, he has this very visual and almost filmic style of running it. And I very much do the same thing. And also being a videographer, someone who's done sort of music videos and other small creative projects, you choose the actors and the people that you want to work with. And because you have that freedom of choice, typically you can refine the end result. Now, obviously, if you're just playing a game as part of a club, obviously there are going to be rules that might change that. But if you're in a personal setting, if you are able to pick the people that you want to play with, then there is nothing really wrong with the DM just saying, I want to play with these guys. So that's my 2 cents on it. I'm gonna stick by what I said. Oh my god, I'm ready for the waves of counter arguments that'll come, but I'm down for a discussion, and yeah, that's my opinion. Fuck.
I would 100% agree with you. 100%.
Well, I can only imagine the community is going to suggest even more good questions like this one.
That's the idea.
And I hope my luck is on my side in the future.
All right, thank you.
You're wrong. Like you make a good point about like if you're in your own house, like you don't just invite random people into your house, do you?
No,
you choose,
exactly.
So like, that makes sense.
Yeah. But it's like if you've got a group of friends and like say you've got 8 of them but you only want to run a game for 4 and you've got to essentially eliminate like half of your friendship circle, it should be, I guess, a split decision, or at least like random if you think that they're all equal, but really you can't get away from the biases. I think that's my point here. It's like you can't help but get away from the fact that like I enjoy playing with this player because he does the kind of shit that I enjoy.
My missus wants to play, so I'm going to let them play, obviously.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another way to put it is like if you're playing a sport, let's say football for example. You have a bunch of guys in your team, you're going up against another team, and there's one guy on your team who likes to go for the ankles. Do you want to keep playing with that kind of person?
Yeah,
That's how I'll put it. I'll put it that way.
I think both sides of the team would have an opinion on such a thing.
Yeah.
So do you want me to roll again, Leon?
Yeah, give us another D10 roll. Get it nice and close to the microphone so we can hear that sexy dice bounce.
0. So that's 10.
That'll be 10. Okay, this will be an easy one. The question is, what are your biggest inspirations for writing?
And that is a 2, so that's you, Leon, isn't it?
That's me. Okay, my biggest inspirations for writing. This is actually a hard question for me. I was kind of hoping I wouldn't get this one. I don't really write anything. I barely plan my sessions. I plan my sessions like an hour before we're about to start. I mean, between sessions, I'll have ideas ticking around in my head, but I won't settle on what I'm going to do for that session until about an hour before the session. That said, I do have some inspirations. One I've already mentioned, Harmon Quest. I take a lot from that. And then I have inspirations that I have for individual settings. For example, when I ran Curse of Strahd, the biggest piece of inspiration I used for that was Castlevania on Netflix. That is the exact vibe I was aiming for.
Yeah.
What a show.
On that setting. Yeah, it's amazing.
So good. I still need to watch the newest season, but it's just so good.
Whenever I picture Barovia in my mind, I picture Castlevania. And at the moment, I'm running Ghosts of Saltmarsh. And my biggest inspiration for that, similar to Castlevania, is Black Sails, if you've ever seen that on Amazon. That's my biggest
I've seen it advertised, never watched it.
Yeah, same.
Such a good show. Such a good show. It's basically Game of Thrones, but it's pirates, and the ending is satisfying.
Nice.
But when it comes to actually putting a game together, as we've already mentioned, I use modules. I'll also like to have a look through DM's Guild, buy some things I think look interesting and see how I can put those into my games. Then you've got guys like Puffin Forest and all the other YouTubers. Those are my biggest inspirations when I'm putting a session together. Like I said, I don't plan anything until like an hour in advance, but it's ticking around in my head continuously. Like if I've got a session on Friday, on Monday I'll be thinking, okay, so last session, Adderson shot someone in the foot. What should I do next time?
Hang on.
And I'll be thinking about that the whole week, and then it'll be like an hour before the session I decide what to actually do.
It's like a eureka moment, isn't it? Like, yes, that's what I'm going to do.
Basically, yeah.
See, it's very interesting that obviously, you know, that's how you DM. And I reckon that we're going to have a few audience members that will be like, you know what, Leon, I'm with you, boy. Like, hours before the session, I'm making up everything. Like...
You know what? I used to plan sessions in detail. I used to do that. I did that for a whole campaign, actually. It was Waterdeep Dragon Heist, which I ran started late 2018, finished early 2019. It's a rather short campaign. But for that, I would plan the sessions meticulously. There's this NPC and there's this place and so on and so forth. But then the session came around and the players didn't talk to that NPC. They didn't go to that place, and I would just have to make stuff up on the fly anyway. So I thought, why am I wasting all this time planning the session for the players just to throw it out the door?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, I guess it's me. Let's see.
It's
what
you,
question.
so we only
What
need to
do you
roll for the
get?
question.
I've got 7.
Oh, okay, you've got a good one. Number 7 is happiest GM moment.
So I've got a couple actually, and most of them involve like player enjoyment. Like, so there's obviously the time when my wife first played, and seeing her get like really excited about that was awesome, and like, she had some really good moments. But I think the happiest I've ever been was there was a kid in the group at the school. He was selective mute. He literally almost like he had a bubble around him, and if you went in that bubble or you went out of that bubble, the world was ending. And he played a ranger, and he always sat near me, maybe a bit too behind the DM screen, but he wasn't. It was like his safety net. And one of the other characters went down, and bearing in mind this kid has not spoken for the whole session. It's been about an hour and he's not spoken.
Yeah.
And then out of nowhere, I've just got a character sheet on my face, and he just turns around to me and looks at me dead in the eye. Bearing in mind the kid's got a fringe, so he doesn't look at people, like severe autistic tendencies, and he just goes, "Show me what I can do to help him in a voice I had never heard.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay. And like my boss at the time, the Senko, was like, you do realise that was like a big thing, right? And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, well, he wouldn't have cared. And he was just like, he was so, and it made me well up with pride that this kid who wasn't friends with these kids who he was playing with, just went, right, I need to help him, so show me how and I will do it. And he did it perfectly, and he was like him. And then he was like, yeah, and then you would hear him talk about like that and other moments to those kids who
That's
would
amazing.
never have been
That is
his
amazing.
friends. Yeah, and would never have been his friends, and it was just it's even making me emotional now.
Yeah, no, that is beautiful. That is the power.
Yeah, my eyes
right
are
now.
a bit wet, and I wasn't even there.
But yeah,
That's it. That's like Troy, you just said. That's the power. D&D is amazing for people like that. It's got this kid out of his shell.
Yep.
He's talking. There was all this fuss in the 80s about D&D being this demonic cult thing, which was absolutely batshit stupid and crazy and just.
Yeah, I've seen a few.
But
that was mainly in America, and they yeah.
But then you hear the stories like you've just told us, and we've each given our own personal stories about how it's helped us. If you're listening to this and you haven't played D&D, just do it. It's one of the best things you can do.
Definitely.
It's a leap of faith, but the world that you will leap into is warm, comforting, and is filled with good people.
Exactly. I was
Yeah.
going to say, like, you will take that leap and you will definitely be caught. There is no no like hard landing, crash or anything. You'll definitely be caught, and you will grow and you'll enjoy it. And like I've said, I've met some of my best friends now through, including yourselves, through D&D.
I mean, D&D has got us doing this podcast, guys, so...
Yeah, very true. Very, very true.
I think that's a really nice, wholesome note to wrap this up on.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
the deck of many questions.
Yeah.
Hopefully next time we do this, we can have some questions from some listeners.
Yes.
This is the first one. We are nobodies. So if we do get some listeners, that would be amazing.
Yep.
It would be even more amazing if we can get some questions for this deck of many questions. But that brings this first episode of Firsts to an end. We haven't decided what we're going to do for the next topic, but we'll tweak that out. We'll put the question out there, see if anybody has any suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
We have a list of potential themes that we're going to use. We haven't settled on that yet, but like I said, we'll put that out there.
Yep.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for Troy and Adderson for agreeing to do this. I think it's gone fantastically. I've enjoyed this. How do you guys think it's went?
Some technical issues, but we'll get past it.
Teething issues, yeah.
Teething issues, but all in all, bloody good chat, lads. Bloody
Yeah,
good
really
chat.
good chat.
Well,
Follow our social medias.
Yep.
We've got a Twitter, we've got an Instagram. What else do we have? Do we have a Facebook?
we are going to make a Facebook when this first
We're
drops
going
to put it
make
in.
Facebook. Excellent.
Yep.
And this is going to go on YouTube. Are we going to put this on any other podcasting sites, or we're going to figure that out later?
We'll figure that out. It's a learning
figure it out.
experience.
Links will be somewhere. Click on them. Talk to us. We want to hear from you.
Yeah.
And we hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
See you later, guys.
Peace.